challenges we face in hospitality today can't be solved with yesterday's methods. We all know that. We're all adapting. We're all changing. We need a new way of thinking. And as I've just been discussing with the two guests today, Steve and Joel, is that we can't, try to solve problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. And that was Albert Einstein that said that. And actually what we're going to do today is actually explore some of those challenges and opportunities that's within that, and actually how we can actually use technology to actually solve some of that, and actually also maybe even better, as Steve said, how can we actually achieve more, and how can we actually explore these opportunities that comes out of using tech in the right way. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, and welcome back, Joel. It's 2022. We talked about the outcomes of the pandemic and all the tech we switched on, and now we're going to be talking about a potential solution to that. So I'm very, very excited, Joel, to have you back on the show. Steve, should we start with you, because it would be great just to hear the origin story from why the Azzurri group got involved in a tech company and what problem you set out to solve.
Yeah, sure, Mike. I mean, it was a very sort of organic journey for us. I mean, it really started with what we saw as a sort of genuine problem that we couldn't find a solution to. And the problem that had sort of manifested, I think, happened, in my view anyway, happened very quickly. So I worked in hospitality for 30 years. And, traditionally, you had restaurants. In my experience's case, all the customers predominantly used to come into the restaurant, and it used to be a relatively, I don't want to say easy job. Restaurants have never been easy, but from a sort of a management of your menu and your products, it was relatively easy. Everyone had a POS system. You entered your information into your POS system, and that was able to facilitate the transactions that the waiters and the servers used to take in the restaurant. And then something happened like overnight in COVID, in my view, is suddenly the world changed very rapidly. We had sort of 5 or 10 years of restaurant evolution in 5 and 10 minutes. And what I mean by that is that suddenly we had this massive adoption of delivery. So the aggregators, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber, and the others suddenly became accelerated in their usage. And for our business, what was 1 or 2% of revenue suddenly became 20% of revenue. As we went through COVID, we had the adoptions of pay and order at table technology, which was around before COVID. But of course, the level of adoption of that or usage from customers accelerated rapidly. And the onset of things like digital kiosks, websites, overhead technology, and then other complications like calorie reporting legislations, allergy requirements, full ingredient information, all of this sort of extra information you needed to provide to your customers just wasn't required 10 years ago. Even photography, now on every menu, on every website, on delivery, you've got photographs of each of your dishes. We didn't used to take photographs of restaurant dishes 5 or 10 years ago. So suddenly you were faced with this hugely complex problem, whereas in the old world, you just had to put something into your till and on your menu. Now you had to provide all of that information on multiple digital systems across the spectrum, as well as providing way more complex menu information than ever before. And so Joel and I were like, well, this is causing us real problems. First of all, we had the army of people that we had working in Azzurri who were just updating system after system after system with exactly the same information. So there was a huge inefficiency point here. And there was an accuracy issue, because, when you got humans entering the same information into system after system, errors occur. In fact, I remember a time, Joel, remember when we were uploading the Deliveroo, and I think I'm going to get this wrong, but broadly, someone left a 0 off the end of the price point on a margarita. So instead of selling something for £12, £11, we were selling it for, £1.10. And it took us at least a week before we realized, what had happened to the revenue in this particular channel. And that's just a small example of, how the accuracy and the efficiency became a major problem. So Joel and I were sort of getting our heads together and thinking, right, well, we need to find a way to be able to solve this problem so we can have greater efficiency, greater accuracy, and be able to move much more quickly, because menu changes were taking, 3 months to do. And then with all this complexity, it was sometimes 6 months to plan and change a menu. And that sort of, that slow speed, if you like, was really unacceptable when you then also entered this like massively fast changing environment with inflation at 10%, 11%. The businesses needed to move much more quickly than that. And we just didn't have the systems that were enable us to do that. And that's really where we were sort of started this journey on thinking about, what solution we could find to fix it. And that's really why we built our own. And Joel can probably pick it up from here, because we couldn't really find anything that was able to solve that problem for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. So clearly, we didn't sit around the table kind of just dreaming up ideas to, what tech business can we build tomorrow? We're not insane. A bunch of good leaders there just trying to, run a great business. So the first thing we did was go out and take a look, because we kind of thought, surely there's got to be a solution to this problem in the market. And that was informed, by my background in grocery retail. Last time I was on, Michael, we spoke a little bit about the kind of background of Sainsbury's, and these kind of platforms that kind of help you just get the right accurate data and information into all of these different systems are a dime a dozen in other sectors. And so we went out and we couldn't find anything that genuinely kind of solved the root problem, which was standardizing that product data, that menu data, that pricing data, that venue data, which, when you boil it down, that's what you need, those four kind of key elements. And so we started to think, well, if it doesn't exist, maybe we should build it. So before we kind of, jumped into that, we spoke to some of our peers. I spoke to people at, Burger King, Cafe Nero, Stonegate Group, and others, just to validate that, guys, it's not just us, is it? Like, this is, all the problems that Steve's articulated in terms of manual keying errors and things taking weeks when they should take days. And, the days of kind of staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning on the night of a menu change, because it's the only time that you can, to program your menu to go live the next day.
Till freezes, Joel. Where you can't do anything for months.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just us, is it? We're not just kind of, operating in a different way to everyone else. And universally, we found that everyone was experiencing the same pain and the same frustration, which is ultimately then what set us on the journey of actually starting to try and build this solution for ourselves. And it's interesting because if you look at other sectors that have had similar problems with, a lack of standardization, a lack of common language about a product, about a menu, about a price, the only way this has ever been solved is by legislation, which is not coming in hospitality for this particular problem, or by operators working together. And therefore, if a solution is going to have the impact that we want it to in the sector, it needs to be driven by operators, which is ultimately then what drove the impetus around building this thing out.
And there's a couple of questions that comes to my mind when you presented it that way. And I think I said it before in our conversation before the interview, is like, it's quite counterintuitive to think about a hospitality business, a big hospitality business decides to build tech on the side, create a new company. And I don't know which of you guys wants to pitch in on this first. Why separate from the business?
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, we did have a sort of, I think part of it stemmed from the fact that, I think there were two things actually, Michael. One was because I think we understood the problem and we couldn't find anyone to solve it. And as we said, we went large and wide. And then when Joel and we were speaking to other operators, we recognized they had a similar problem. And this sort of common data model, sort of came about that we're thinking, wouldn't it be great if there was one? Because that means all the system could, everything can communicate with each other. It could do it in real time. It would be super, super, super quick. And we thought that there must be an opportunity to solve this. In open banking, for example, would establish when a group of banks got together and look at what happens now with instant transactions and payments going through. And it's sort of unlocked this sort of massive opportunity to accelerate and make everything faster and better for consumers. And we thought, so we ended up getting a bit carried away by the vision of what we could achieve if your menu was at the center of the universe and there was a common data model for hospitality, and everyone seemed to share with that vision. And because we couldn't find a solution, where we thought, well, we can either not do anything about it, or we could try and build our own. And I think with Joel, this comes from my second reason. Joel had some experience from Sainsbury's of how retail had sort of solved some of these challenges. And I think that helped, certainly from my perspective and our board, it helped us think that, why hasn't this been solved in hospitality? And we probably had I don't know, maybe we got a bit carried away, but it was a case of, if we don't solve it, someone's going to solve it. It has to happen, and it will happen. And we saw a real good business case. So actually, we thought we might as well put our capital expenditure into building a product, because we thought we could deliver a return, even if it was just for ourselves, and if we can then help solve a problem for other people as well, and ultimately create this vision of a common data model for hospitality, then that would be great as well. But so I think we convinced ourselves that there was a return just if we did it ourselves. So with Joel's networks that from people who did before, we had a few people that could help us with engineering, because we didn't have an engineering or capability in Azzurri at that time. And so we put a team of people together that we knew, and off we went.
And Joel, where are you now from a technical point of view? If you talked about a common data model, what does that mean? I'll be my first question when I heard that word, then what does it do for me? Yeah, as an operator.
Yeah, so I think that I'll try and describe it in a way that everyone will understand. So hopefully everyone, if everyone's worked in a kitchen or been in a kitchen, they'll know what a gastronome pan is, or sometimes known as hotel pans. So before that came along, kitchens were chaos. So containers came in all different sorts of shapes and sizes, designed for one piece of kit and useless in another. So you had, a tray that fit into the oven, didn't fit into the fridge. Storage was pretty clumsy, workflows were inefficient, waste was high. And something happened in 1964, the gastronome kind of sizing standard was introduced, which was when suddenly one container could move seamlessly from fridge to prep bench to combi oven to dishwasher, and suppliers and manufacturers all aligned around that shared system. And as a result, professional kitchens became much faster, much safer, and much more consistent. So that kind of very relatively simple standard unlocked efficiency across the industry. And our argument is that data is still in the hospitality sector, is still stuck in the kind of pre-gastronome era, if you like. So everyone is defining a menu in a slightly different way. Everyone is defining their pricing model in a slightly different way. Everyone is structuring a product in a slightly different way. And it's really not that different from just having a whole different bunch of size pots and pans. And therefore, when you try and kind of put your menu into a delivery size pot, you have to massage it one way. When you put it into a point of sale type pot, you have to massage it another way. And our argument is there's no competitive advantage in a menu, in a price, in product in terms of that data structure. So a common data model is effectively trying to do what Gastronome did in the 1960s, which was to define a standard way of describing a menu, product, pricing. What that means, you get the same benefits that the kitchen's got from the standardization of those pans, which is you can effectively rapidly roll out menus to new platforms. You can roll out change at pace with minimal errors and 100% accuracy, because you've got this standardized data model that's underpinning everything and helping all of your systems talk to one another seamlessly.
And I guess also what both of you said is also that you are removing some of the human factor of making input, but also finding out where the mistakes are quicker. So you avoid to have a margarita for sale for a week. You maybe have it on for hours before you discover the mistake.
That's it.
Yeah. And avoid the mistake in the first place. Ultimately, the vision is to augment teams. So they're still in control of their menu strategy, their pricing strategy, their product strategy. That's driven by the leadership. But then ultimately to execute that at scale with 100% accuracy and rapid speed.
And you started out with Steve talking about, one of the things as well is that before you put the POS into the building and everything was centered around that. And why is that actually sometimes holding you back when you work like that? And how does actually Openr change this game? Because I think that's quite important. It's probably you, Joel, from a technical point where you talked about the gastronome trace, which I thought was a really interesting way of thinking about it. You're spot on. That's really where kitchen productivity change. But how does that, again, work from an Openr point of view? Technical, what is it that's happening?
Yeah, from a technical point of view, what's happening, Michael, is we are ingesting that data from all sorts of different sources and different platforms. So you might have a recipe management platform that you built yourself or bought from one of the many number of recipe manager platforms out there. You might have a system that is storing all of your venue data. You might have a system that's mastering your pricing data. What we can do is take data from anywhere, from any system via any format. You can upload it in the spreadsheet. You can pull it in via an integration API. The method is not important. We support everything. We effectively then transform that into the industry standard data model, which we give as publicly available. It's available for anyone to build to. And that effectively means that you can be confident that an allergen is always an allergen, a calorie is always a calorie, a price is always a price. And what we'll then do is take that common standard that we have built and covers pretty much every piece of data that a hospitality operator has and uses, and then transform it into menus, into product libraries, into venue lists, etc., that gets published across all of the channels that need to consume it. So we take data in, transform it into the standard, and then push data out, transforming it back into our partners' data models. Over time, our ambition and our kind of vision is that common model becomes adopted by more and more operators and tech vendors in the ecosystem. So that translation doesn't even need to happen. It just flows in and out.
So it's principle changing structure of how we're doing things. That's really the big vision for Openr in a way. How can we change the structure around how we share data in hospitality and how we get it aligned across all the different platforms we are pulling data from?
I certainly think that's what it started as, Marco. I think as we've kind of evolved down the journey. So, Steve's kind of told this story, but we were ultimately looking, to solve what I kind of call a plumbing problem, which is, how do you get accurate data everywhere? The longer we've gone at this and the more we've learned from our customers, the more we've become excited about the optimization opportunity that creates. So yeah, it's about getting accurate data, and it is about data structure at its heart. That's the kind of underlying technology. But the really exciting thing starts to come, well, then what do you do with that? What happens when you can change your menu and your pricing on a dime for a dime, when it doesn't cost you anything anymore and you can move rapidly? And that's where, we've been thinking and developing the product and the platform really over the last 12 months or so.
Well, and this is where I get excited as well as a CEO, because the technology around a common data model is sure, but what does that enable you to do? It means that you can take your menu and your pricing and your digital assets and everything that's been augmented by Openr, and you can push it to any system, including POS, but your kiosks, your website, your menu tool, your POS provider, the tills in the restaurants, the delivery aggregate. You can push it to any channel that needs it immediately or even in real time. So live. So then you just sort of think, wow, this is incredible. Because for me as an operator, where we're changing menus and it's taking 3 months to 6 months to check every single thing is accurate. There's a program to update every single system to make sure they all go live. And then you have to coordinate so it all goes live on the same day. You just put it once into Openr, effectively press publish, and it all goes live, which means that, a really good example of this was a conversation I was having with someone in the sector recently, where you may know the price of beef has gone massively up recently for a number of reasons. But if you want to change, but you're then taking a huge financial hit on your P&L because the cost of beef gone up, and you're not able to change the price of your burgers or your steaks on your menu for maybe 3 to 6 months because of the time it takes to put everything else that is involved with changing a menu around it. Whereas if you had Openr and it was, and you were using it, you could go into the menu, change the burger, put the price up 10p, 20p. If you felt that was what you wanted to do to offset the price of beef, press publish and it changes all of your systems in real time. So that cost of you've had to bear for many months, you can now mitigate overnight by changing it. And so it suddenly thought, well, hang on, this is quite interesting. And it opened up this whole conversation. Joel and I were, and I don't want to use it, it's a bit of a dirty word, but sort of dynamic pricing. So, and I'm not going to come on here and advocate dynamic pricing, because there's lots of strong views on both extremes. But what the system Openr allows you to do is to, you can use it for dynamic pricing if you want, or you can just use it to do what I've just said around the price of beef and put the price of a product up and change it tomorrow. Or you can use it to have, in our businesses historically have 1 or 2 price bands. You could have 7 different price bands if you wanted to, but you can't do that in the current structure because it's way too manual and complicated to have 7 different pricing bands or tiers. You can change your prices if you want to 3 or 4 times a year. Most restaurant businesses, pubs, maybe once or twice a year. You can put them down in January, up at Christmas. You give that all that sort of pricing flexibility, which we don't have in hospitality at all, is enabled. Well, is possible with Openr and enabled by this common data model that sits underneath in this sort of one version of the truth that sits in the middle of the universe in Openr, which can then publish everywhere. And that's when we got really excited about the financial opportunity for restaurant businesses.
And I guess also here, Steve, from a commercial point of view, is also that you can actually act on what's going on in real time in the world. If it's cost of labor, cost of food, whatever it is, inflation, you can actually act accurately on that very, very quickly before. And actually what you haven't seen in hospitality normally is that you do that. Like you take airlines, if their fuel cost goes up, they will react on ticket prices very quickly.
Absolutely. This is a really good example. Any airline prices, other industries that operate with, let's call it dynamic pricing, not in the sort of, it has a bad name, but just this ability to price in real time because your systems are all, built around a common data model is something that hospitality's never had the ability to do. Supermarkets, airlines with the price of fuel, supermarkets price points change on thousands of products, thousands of times, a week. As they optimize their, the price point for customers. And it's not all about charging more because you can. Dynamic pricing is about optimizing your pricing to give the best value to your customers as well as, and of course that might be pricing up sometimes, but it's pricing down as well. And people can use it however they want to use it. But this technology, this system allows you to do whatever you want in pricing in real time, which personally I think is very, very exciting.
And I have a background for McDonald's, and then you think about McDonald's, we always talked about our capacity in our restaurants. So what is our capacity to sell? So how many man hours do we need actually to hit the sales, or how big should the building be to hit the capacity and so on? Did you had some learnings around how to control capacity better as you developed the technology? Did you have any insights into this? Because I think that's really interesting, well, to utilize your capacity as a business as well when things goes up and down.
Yeah, I mean, the system is flexible and can take kind of input from, multiple external data sources. So that could be the capacity of your sites, the throughput at the till in terms of, number of items or number of, transactions per hour, event data from externally, weather data, etc. And then ultimately what we do as a platform is enable the operator to be in control of how they want their menu strategy and their pricing strategy to respond to those external systems. So I think the problem isn't that kind of operators lack ideas around this. It's that the execution is just so slow, so manual and so fragmented that you kind of can't do anything about it. And so it's not necessarily our role to, build a black box that just spits out kind of a whole bunch of menus and prices. It's our role to build tools that help operators execute the hypotheses they already have and the strategies that they already have kind of at scale, and then enable them to see the result really quickly and then make kind of course corrections, because some things are going to work, some things aren't going to work. And ultimately what we need to do, whether it's around, as you've said, kind of the capacity of the location, whether it's around the weather that's outside, or whether it's an event that's taking place within 500 meters of a venue, we need to give operators better tools to kind of rapidly experiment, try things, see what's working, keep the good stuff, learn from the stuff that isn't working, and just kind of go again and again.
And what have been your, I don't know which of you guys want to pitch it, but what has been like the big commercial learnings in developing the technology and deploying it? What has like been the super big ones besides, you can react fast and you get accurate data? Has there been other wins that's like happening as you're working with the technology?
I mean, you've got the obvious one that you've touched on, Michael, which is just, you have the ability to turn on a dime for a dime, make changes whenever you need. I think the other the kind of big benefit is just the time that it frees up. So you can spend more time thinking about innovating rather than executing. So, strategically, you're freeing up hours and hours of time that your teams are currently spending, doing data entry and ultimately data checking, often at a very senior level, doing table reads of menus around the table, just trying to make sure that, no one's got the description wrong or the price wrong. And that's all time back that then leadership can invest in strategy and brand building.
Well, and the accuracy point as well shouldn't be underestimated, particularly around allergens. I mean, allergen, where they say 1 in 4 customers these days have some sort of allergen or intolerance to food, and these are things that, as a CEO of a restaurant business, these are things that keep me awake at night. You can't get that wrong. And we've now got across, Azzurri, we've got several restaurant businesses operating several different menus and several different price points, where this menu is published in 6 or 7 different systems. And I get an awful lot of comfort knowing that you just need to check that the allergen information is correct in Openr once. And sure, there's a check to make sure that works, but you haven't got that risk that it's going to be right on one system and wrong on another. And you can't afford for errors to be made in things like allergens, because there's been some, horrendous news where when restaurant businesses have got it wrong, and there's horrendous consequences. And so, and that problem's getting bigger, not getting smaller. So, this idea that you can have one version of the truth, it's super accurate. Joel's point around efficiency. So you're managing your teams, the teams that you might have can now be deployed on pricing strategies and growth opportunities rather than on data entry, and let the technology sort of take care of that. And then you get this 100% accurate information going live, which I also don't think can be underestimated.
And it's really interesting to say, Steve, because that's again about risk management, isn't it, as well? Like managing a risk like that can be has a huge negative impact on the brand if something happens around allergens or other things that actually really impacts people's health. And I guess also, if then the issue should happen, then you can act very quickly. You can find out where the problem was, and you can act on it as quickly as possible to get it stopped.
You can immediately, Michael, exactly. You find that there's a mislabel on a margarita around dairy, make it up. You change the flag in Openr immediately, and that will change that flag on that allergen for that product on every system where that product's been published. And so it's a problem that can be solved very, very quickly. And or if you misprice your margarita and you charge £1.10 for it, and you want to add a 0 on the end, that is also very quick and immediate to be able to change as well.
Another thing I was thinking about is you said that, Steve, you talk about because again, you have a front line that always an impacted about whatever you roll out in your business. The front line is the one that's impact the biggest, but also the one that can actually stop things from working. In the past, you always said that 70% of the issues with implementing new initiative systems or technology really came to the front line not adapting it, either by poor communication or bad leadership of getting it out there. Does Openr, in your view, enable the front line much better to do a good job serving the customers?
I think what's interesting about this, and this might be the opposite, the answer that you're expecting, Michael, is that I don't think it's had any impact on the front line at all. And
that's good, isn't it?
I say that as a positive rather than negative, because this is all in the sort of background, if you like, and it's how they're still working with the same POS system that they were always working with. So they just now they don't understand how it's been uploaded, whether it was done directly or through Openr and then published. They're still working with the same delivery aggregators, Deliveroo, Uber, Just Eat, as they were before, similar systems. So there's no real obvious change to them as a user. Hopefully the benefits that they're getting, they don't even know that they're getting, because they're getting more accurate information. There's less likely to be a customer complaint because you've done something wrong. There's less likely to be an error with the bill. There's less. So all of the things that and they're probably not massive wins, but they are, individually. But for a team member, they probably don't notice because they don't know what problem they would have had if it hadn't been accurate in the first place, if you see what I mean. So hopefully that leads to better customer experiences, because there's less certainly from an allergen perspective, which we already talked about, but from an accuracy perspective, from a description perspective, from a photography, but everything should be 100% accurate, and that has to mean that there's going to be less disappointed customers.
But I guess also it takes the stress away from the front line, as you say, because they don't have to have those questions, because the customer would never have that question about allergens. So it's very clear it's working, it's actually doing its thing. It's very clear what the price is, because it's not, that didn't happen that suddenly there's a discrepancy on price or discrepancy on allergen.
Or the wine list says, one price, and the handheld table order says a different, and the customer is going, and why does it say 195 on here and 185 on there? And, which price is it? You won't have any of that, because everything will 100% have the same price. So it's an interesting question. As you say, it doesn't affect the customers, the team members at all, the frontline at all, but yet it sort of does.
Joel, what have you learned around the technology that really has surprised you from a technical point of view that's you didn't actually know before you started the journey? Of course, you had a vision, you were working on the technology, but there's probably something that's really surprised you as you worked on the problem in different environments, I could imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think as we've gone on the journey, we've realized that there wasn't a solution out there in the market, because this is a hard problem to solve. So it's definitely a kind of technical challenge. There is so much fragmentation in the sector in terms of how everyone is defining this, which means that there is a lot of work to do to simplify and to standardize. And as a company, we bear the brunt of that, because it's ultimately our role to do all of that in the background, whilst our customers just get the benefit of exactly what Steve's talked about, which they get the same bundle or set menu that ultimately appears on your website, on your delivery platform, in your order and pay it table app, in your point of sale system. Actually, behind the scenes to achieve it's bloody hard, because you've got all of these different data models, different rules that everyone has kind of defined with best intentions, kind of on their own in isolation. And we're growing the number of platforms that we integrate with, number of POS partners, delivery platform partners, website agencies, order and pay at tables. It's in one thing, it kind of validates the problem that we're trying to solve, but it doesn't change the fact that is a complex problem to solve, and probably more complex than I initially thought. But that's what we do. It's our bread and butter, and it's ultimately our job to solve that on behalf of our customers, so they don't have to experience that pain. And it's a good reason why often people might think, well, why can't I just do this myself? Trust me, it's super difficult and super complex.
Well, that's exactly right. It was much harder than, and I'm not involved in the day-to-day sort of thinking of on the technological side, but it has been way harder than we thought. It's taken way longer than we thought. I don't think Joel has been focusing on anything else for the best part of 4 years. And if I'm honest, it's been way more expensive than we thought as well. So, but I think Joel's right. I think we thought it's a simple problem. That's the thing, but it's incredibly difficult to solve. And as Joel said, when people think that they can solve it themselves, or it's relatively easy, it's really not. And we've spent 4 years honing, refining, getting feedback from lots of our, colleagues and friends who run other hospitality businesses to try to finesse the setup of the products. And, it's now at the point where it's really advanced and actually very usable. So, but yeah, definitely a long and difficult journey.
When you said in a board meeting, I guess you use the tool actively, Steve, would you say it's like your second brain on strategic decisions, Openr? Is that how you see it? You talked a bit about like having that support and accuracy in a way so you actually can get to what you are in the room to do, make the decisions and action plans.
Totally. It's an enabler. And I'll tell you what it's done more than anything else. It's released that sort of, that frustration, because, we wanted to do things. There were things that we knew we wanted to do around, let's call it even pricing optimization. We knew that there were challenges, especially when we were in that high inflationary environment. And we were like, right, we figured out around the board what we want to do. Right, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And so you talk to the food teams, the marketing teams, the IT, right, we want to implement X. Yeah, no problem. We can have that done, for you in about 5 or 6 months. And we're like, no, 5 or 6 months, there'll be something else that we need to do. We need this done in 5 or 6 minutes. And then we've got some time to think about something else. And then we spent a disproportionate amount of time thinking about and talking about how we can accelerate the 5 to 6 months time frame to maybe try to do it in 3 or 4. All of that time could be better spent thinking about further things that we could do to drive and innovate our business: menu development, product development, marketing campaigns, et cetera, and using our, the brain power for brand building, for business building, rather than for sort of implementation. And it just meant that whatever we choose to do in the business now is just like, right, well, this is it. This is what we've decided. Boom, it's done. Now we can think about what else we want to do strategically to grow our businesses.
And that's really interesting because often you are, you're solving operational implementation challenge in many leadership teams, but you're not spending actually time on building the company house looking in
exactly
X years, or what is the direction you're doing that on top of it. It's like an add-on, but actually you can maybe shift those two things, which you probably need to prepare for the future more than ever. Yeah. Not planning your way out of the way to the future. Yeah? I thought that's really interesting.
No, exactly.
You talk a lot about the standardization, Joel, around like creating a shared standard approach to data collection. How do we get that right when there's so many businesses have different views? And how do we both get a standard and flexibility of how people want to use systems?
Yeah, I mean, that ultimately needs to be driven by operators. So, we are hoping to ultimately kind of create a movement where we're defining the status quo and saying that there's a better way. We think benefits everyone, actually. It benefits operators, it benefits tech vendors, it certainly benefits customers. And the only thing stopping it is a collective will. So that's our challenge, is ultimately to kind of build that coalition and to build momentum as we grow. And as we scale around that common standard, because it's ultimately, going to be a challenge of will, not a challenge of skill. And the way to solve that, as Steve talked about this in banking. Another example is standardization of barcodes in retail. There's stuff in the hotel sector that standardizes kind of hotel availability data, which is what powers all of your bookings engines. Etc. All three of those examples have been when operators have got together so that there's benefit in all of us working together collaboratively to standardize. So that's the movement that we're heading at.
I think the barcode one I find fascinating because when you think about it, it's crazy that there was a time when Tesco's are selling their products and they want a scanning barcode so they can put it through their tills, and then Sainsbury's are doing the same thing and they come up with a different barcoding system, and then Morrison's come up with a different and the idea as consumers that you go into a supermarket and each can of beans has got 6 different barcodes on it because it depends on which supermarket you happen to be selling that tin of beans is just nonsensical if you think about it. Of course the supermarkets got together and said, look, this is non-competitive. Surely we should just have one barcode for a tin of beans. We'll all use the same barcode, and whatever till system we want to work with can read that barcode. It's easier for the consumer. It's better for the tin of beans because it hasn't got loads of barcodes on it. And the supermarkets can spend their time on, growing their businesses, focusing on their customer experience, focusing on their products and other technologies, and not worrying about, and I think we've reached our time in hospitality where we need to do exactly that, do something similar. Like operators need to get together and say, why are we all spending hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds a year on lots of different technology providers to maintain these, completely different data models? How much money would we save, and how much efficiency would we create, and how much pace would we enable if we all just set our the data that we use which is common to all hospitality businesses, which is we all have a menu, we all sell products. If all of those menus and products and venues could all be in the same model, how much would that free up our businesses, not just in terms of financial firepower, but also in terms of mobility and our ability to be able to drive our businesses forward rather than, as we said earlier, trying to solve these operational challenges. And that's when you get excited about the vision. This is where we were 5 years ago when we were starting Openr, and we get excited about what could happen. And if it's happened in supermarkets with barcodes, and in hotels with bookings, and in airlines, surely it should happen and will happen in hospitality. And we want Openr to be the forefront of that.
And where are we now? Where is your gut feel instinct that we are on the appetite for a shared model?
I think there's strong appetite around solving the problem. Like I say, we speak to customers and prospective customers all the time, and there is, real alignment around dissatisfaction with the status quo. I think it's our job over time to, work with our customers and with the sector to help everyone kind of understand what's causing that pain. And that's our job really. I think over the next 6-12 months is to, build the profile of this and help people understand kind of what the solution looks like, and to build the momentum. So there's a lot of momentum around identifying the problems. I think that's getting louder and louder from our conversations. What our mission is over the next 6 months is to build alignment around the solution.
And how does AI play into all of this? I guess there's a lot to talk about AI and how it can optimize hospitality. That's a whole different subject in itself, but actually I guess AI plays a huge enabler to get a shared model as well, quicker and cheaper.
Yeah, it is two-sided, Michael, because actually AI needs common data or well-structured data to be of any use and of any value to anyone. So as long as you have fragmented data sitting across multiple systems, structured differently across different platforms, businesses are going to find it very difficult to genuinely get the true benefits from artificial intelligence. So once you've got all your menu, product, venue, pricing data in a common structure, you can then build AI models on top of that. So we think kind of standardizing data models is a critical enabler to enabling AI, to flip your question around a little bit. And then in terms of our approach within our kind of platform itself to AI, it's just very practical. I don't think operators want a black box that kind of just does some kind of magic and spits out a price. What we think is that operators want a platform that's going to automate things they already do and understand, by managing event pricing, setting price band strategy, rolling out seasonal adjustments, where they're ultimately in control of the parameters, but the AI can take the hard yards of execution for them and can then also then help them understand performance within those parameters and tweak that accordingly. So it's very practical adoption of AI within our platform to replace processes that are just highly manual and time consuming today. With AI, our platform can handle those processes automatically, everything that we've already spoken about. I think looking ahead, the exciting opportunity for us is how AI can become a co-pilot to help operators maximize and optimize those margins more proactively. So spotting where small changes in pricing can protect or grow profitability across a complex estate. That's what we're excited about.
Steve, a question to you here on the end. If you look at the P&L and you think a common data model, what kind of impact would that have on a P&L in 3 to 5 years, you believe, as a business leader?
Yeah, I mean, a common data model is really just, as we've sort of mentioned, it enables lots of the things that Joel has just been talking about. And so you will enable initially some efficiencies and some accuracy, and I think that is valuable, but it's not enormous. The big opportunity is where you get into sort of pricing optimization and the ability to run either really complicated multiple price tiers or bands, to use the AI underpinned pricing optimizer to look at small changing in price that can maximize your margin. And, if you can find a way to eke out, 1% of, let's assume restaurant businesses operate on a 10% EBITDA margin. So, 1% of revenue on the top line grows, it grows your EBITDA by 10%. You can make a material difference to your profitability if you're able to use small changes in your top line to eke out these pricing changes, through sophisticated price bands or through weather changes or seasonal changes or whatever it might be. That's where I think the real value is. And you can add, in Azzurri's case, millions of pounds to the bottom line in a way that, we know that, and we can test using Openr that customers don't even notice.
Wow. So that's could be for a very, a global business, could even be huge amount of money we're talking about.
I think it can be millions if you've got, the maths add up very, very quickly. 100 million turnover business, 1% on the top line, £1 million on the bottom line. So you've increased your profit by 10%. With just a 1% increase in the top line. That's on a standard sort of P&L. So you have the opportunity to add millions, I think, to your profit line if you're able to use these sort of performance optimize, the pricing optimizer in Openr effectively.
To end the conversation, I was thinking there was a question I wanted to ask you both, and you might have different answers to it. But I'll start with you, Joel. What is the one question you wished I asked you around the common data model that I didn't? And what would it be? And what would the answer be?
Yeah, you put me on the spot now, Michael. What's the one question that I wished you'd asked me? I think I got one. It would be, to what extent do I need to, if I'm an operator and I'm thinking about this, to what extent am I going to need to change my tech stack and my processes
that's a good one.
To adopt this? Is this big, scary change? Do I need to rip and replace, on platforms? And the answer I give is no. We've built Openr very specifically, and this calls back to Steve's point around no frontline impacts. Openr exists to orchestrate your data around all the systems that you have today. There's not a huge appetite in big enterprise hospitality businesses to rip out and replace, or to be forced to change their order and pay at table platform, or to be forced to change your point of sale platform, or to be forced to change your delivery providers in order to kind of get that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And what Openr does is come in and it says it works in your existing tech stack and just helps you, as Steve's articulated, generate much better return on investment from the money that you're already spending on your existing tech stack. And therefore your teams in your restaurants can just operate your restaurants as normal without any disruption.
And Steve, what would be the one question you wish I asked you?
I mean, that is a tricky one to answer. I think what's, I guess, are we proud of kind of where we've ended up and the journey we've been on? It feels like it's, I think if we sat back, if I imagine when we were sitting back around the table 4 or 5 years ago saying, oh, well, we can do this, we thought it would be easy and quick. And obviously that's not been the case. But I'm pretty excited now about the opportunity that hospitality has to kind of move into the 21st century with its tech stack, and in a way that doesn't replace any of the other systems that as Joel said, that the guys might be using. And if I think about the financial opportunity and both to the sort of top line, bottom line, but also the efficiencies and this ability to have technology that can, talk to one another. And it means that hospitality is now, right at the forefront of technology rather than behind. I find it, quite exciting because it's an incredible sector, an incredible industry. And I think it deserves to have a technology platform underpinning it that enables it to succeed in the way that it should.
Yeah. And I really like that, Steve, as well, because we all know we need profit to be a great industry. Yeah. And that's where,
and it's difficult right now, right? It's really hard sector. It's never been a good sector to make money, and particularly, and it's challenging, being a challenging consumer environment for many, many years, and people are working really, really hard to eke out any growth at all. And I think a system that can enable you to be more efficient so that you can focus on growing your business rather than just the operational implementation and things has got to be a good thing. And it'll unlock this fantastic industry and enable us to continue to grow and be the job creator sector that we are for the UK, and to revitalize high streets and all of those other good things that hopefully better technology will enable us to be able to deliver.
And what a great place to end, because as you talked about, how could we actually come together to solve some of the common problems we have in the industry? Where can people reach out to you, each of you, if they want to know more? I thought that was interesting what Steve said, or really want to know more about Openr. And how do I reach out to Joel? How do I get in contact? What is the best way? Start with you, Joel.
Yeah, so if you want to find out more about Openr and what we do, you can visit our website, which is weareopenr.com. That's OPENR, weareopenr.com. And love to chat to any of you that are interested in this idea of a common data model, or have been nodding along to some of the pain points that we've articulated over the course of this podcast. Just drop me a message on LinkedIn. It's Joel Robinson.
And Steve?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn as well. So the best way to do that is just to search me up on there and send me a message.
Great. We'll put the links in the show notes so everybody can find it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, creating this conversation about the future of hospitality and tech, and how we actually can maybe become more profitable, and actually how we come together and solve some of our shared problems.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Michael.